Welcome back, everybody. My name is Phil Marry, and this, no, hang on, this, I've got to point the right way.
I'm here.
That's Sean Vickers from Unflocked.
Hi,
Are you taking a breather with Unflocked? Unflocked at the moment. Unflocked?
We have not unflocked. We are still unflopping. No, 23rd of October, our new episode drops, which is an absolute corker.
Oh.
I can't give you too much away. It's actually been the first episode we've recorded IRL, in real life, for about 5 months. And obviously the lockdown's kicked in, so we'll go back to Zoom. But it was absolutely, there was something really gorgeous about recording in the same room as Stuart and Joe.
Yeah.
Because you know all the things that happen when you're recording on a video. There's like weird little time lags, or the way that jokes don't necessarily land because you're not in the same room.
Yeah.
And it was an absolute pleasure to record the new episode because it was easy. I can describe it. Because you can sense, I don't know. There's so many things that when you're recording live, it's just so much nicer than doing it over Zoom.
I'm getting those EastEnders vibes. It's like when they do the live episodes. You should do the live episodes next.
Maybe. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, pre-recorded so last year.
Yeah. I think people would like it because they probably get all the bloopers, because there's quite a lot of bloopers.
Bloopers, that's a nice way to start this review. So, we're talking about Siberia today. Quite a few bloopers.
Come on, Phil, don't load it.
I'm not going to hold back.
Go on.
So this is, how would we describe this film? It's a drama, stroke horror, stroke sci-fi. Oh, I don't know. How would you describe it? Maybe that's a good thing we can't analyze it that much and put it into a genre.
Drama, fantasy, horror.
Yeah. Fantasy. That's the good word. Yes.
I'm getting the sense you didn't like it, Phil.
I'm not saying anything. Not till I've heard what you're going to say.
Well, do you know what? Okay, let's just. I try and set the scene of a film that's almost unseen settable. It's Willem Dafoe working with his longtime collaborator, director Abel Ferrara. They've done a bunch of films together, a long history together, work together. We assume it's set in Siberia, but we can't make any assumptions.
Clues in the title, or maybe not.
Clues in the title, or maybe not. It's a film where it dances between isolation. You know, you've got a character that we presume is in Siberia, living day in, day out, and Abel Ferrara trying to describe in some ways his dreamscape. So what does that isolation mean? And so you get this quite bonkers film that's a bit David Lynchian in a way, where he's trying to describe emotions and trying to describe things that are other than the fact and around this idea of isolation. That's how I perceived it. I think that's the best way I can try and sum it up before we get into the craziness.
That's very interesting you mentioned David Lynch, because I was thinking Lars von Trier also, but that might be because Willem Dafoe obviously is the lead role in this, and he's been in a lot of Lars von Trier movies. For me, though, he looked really uncomfortable in this role. I don't know whether that was me, whether I was having an off day, whether I needed more coffee. I don't know. Or maybe a bottle of wine.
Or two.
There's
bits of I love David Lynch, and I love the bits of David Lynch where I'm like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, me too.
Let it wash over me, right? But usually there is a loose-ish narrative, and then David Lynch allows you to fill in the gaps or work with the subjectivity of it, and then people will always have a view about what it means. This is really, really loose. It's non-linear. It's really challenging. It is beautifully shot, but it's almost creating a mood.
Yeah.
Like you come away with it with a mood or a feeling rather than, a start, middle, and end. And that's okay. I totally get that. And the bits of that are beautifully shot. It makes me think, when you think about a dream, sometimes a dream starts and a dream ends and you don't know where it came from or why it happened. And there's a lot of that in the film, where suddenly you're like, oh, I'm in a different location. Oh, there's a different character. Oh, they're speaking a different language. But in a dream, you're like, you don't think about it. And these things just happen, right? People come and go. It's day or night. It's a location changes, a language changes, a character changes. Weird things happen. And I think that's where he does a very good job of trying to just say, dreams are a bit like this.
They're a bit all over the place.
And that was my takeaway, which was like, just let it wash over you. I believe he's trying to describe how dreams operate, where that person who operates in isolation, that's the person that's very lonely in Siberia. This is what his dreamscape is like. And I don't know how I would go about describing dreams through the art of cinema. But I think Abel Ferrara has a really good crack at it.
See, I don't know whether Abel Ferrara, and this is a man that actually came out with the movie from the early 80s, Driller Killer. I think I mentioned that to you on Twitter, because you're not a horror fan by any means.
No.
And this was one of the horror films that really did shock a lot of people back in the early 80s. And it was, just after the kind of slasher genre really kicked in the late 70s, John Carpenter, and he kind of pushed the envelope even further, Abel Ferrara, with this. And you never really get that sense of, I don't know, it's not so much a video nasty as they were back then. That's what they were called, obviously, in the late 70s, early 80s. But this doesn't really feel nasty enough, actually, for me. And I don't necessarily want gruesome violence. It just didn't feel disturbing enough for me. It felt like this was a director that was trying to provoke that, get that emotion from people. It didn't feel like I was isolated. I wanted to feel isolated. It just felt like the shots were, they moved, they jarred for me. It's like the outside shots were beautiful, and you get that sense of, that environment where it's really cold and threatening, but then the studio shots just felt completely different. They didn't feel dark enough for me. They felt like they were studio shots.
Maybe it was the soundscape, because that's where I think David Lynch does an amazing job, where he gets the sound to the point where it's so aggressive, or it's so kind of like, pervasive, that you're like, oh, it makes you feel uncomfortable. And you don't ever feel that uncomfortable with the film. You're letting it wash over you. But yeah, you get a very different feel to it.
That's a really good point, though, because David Lynch, obviously, the soundtrack's very almost Björky in some respects. It's like she uses a lot of very distorted beats and electronica,
or like sub bass, or very a lot of stuff that makes you feel like it makes you feel uneasy. I don't think that comes across in this film.
No,
and maybe that may be something that we could draw upon. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't hate it. I took it for what it was, and so I kind of came away from it. I thought, oh, that was interesting, but it was more like me watching something like The Craymaster Cycle by Bjork's ex-husband, Matthew Barney, or watching a piece of art house film where you just go, well, it has no narrative. It's trying to describe something else.
You've just hit the nail on the head completely, because I think even if I'd hated it, like I do with Lars von Trier, a couple of his films I have hated, and a few films I've absolutely loved, Dancer in the Dark being an example. I just think that's such a powerful piece of cinema, and I love that film. Yeah, I kind of wanted to hate this more, and it just left me feeling a bit a bit meh.
Yeah, a bit meh. I get that. I can get that. Yeah. I think, it's never going to get a high score for me, but I don't think I'm going to slate it either. I'm being very matter of fact with it. Let's put it that way.
Can we talk about this really bizarre scene, which probably was one of the most bizarre scenes, where a mother and her pregnant daughter come into the bar where Willem Dafoe's character, who's Clint, is serving them drinks. Yeah. And I don't really want to spoil too much, but that was the scene that I really took away from this film, and the scene that I keep thinking of. Did you understand what was going on there? Was that like a sexual repression thing?
Because there'd been a series. There's a series of scenes in the bar. At one point, Willem Dafoe talked to a First Nations person. Then he's talking to some guy who's in the bar. But again, there's all these different languages, and they're not subtitles, so you assume that Willem Dafoe knows. And that's a bit like a dream sequence, where you're like, someone's just talking and you understand what's going on. And then obviously his mother and daughter walk in. You assume there's something there. You assume he knows them. But yeah, there's something quite repressed about that whole thing.
Yeah, totally.
Again, don't spoil. I mean, you can't really spoil it because there's no narrative. But,
no.
But yeah, there's really these kind of set pieces. There's that piece with the mother and the daughter. It's very interesting, and what happens to the mother afterwards. And yeah, I don't know. We could probably sit and have a glass of wine and try and think about why. But it's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. One of the highlights of me is at one point Del Shannon starts playing. They're and there's a bit where Willem Dafoe bops around. And I was like, oh, that's a nice little bit of light relief. Of, Willem Dafoe dancing around to Del Shannon. I like that.
Yeah, I wanted it to be more bizarre. Maybe I've been spoilt. Maybe I've been spoilt by some of the films that I consider to be my favourites of been really freaky films.
But did you think, what do you think, because of your because of his horror history.
Yeah.
Do you think you came to this film with expectations?
Maybe because I found out just before that it was, and I was quite excited by that because I've not seen Driller Killer, but I love the fact that this is a director who's, I'm guessing, in his 70s now, still directing films that are going to make people think and question what they've just seen, and I love that. I love, you know, provocative cinema, but for me, it didn't live up to those expectations. That probably is a very good point, actually, because I mean, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have found that out before.
I often find if I have, and it's like your kind of unconscious bias at times. Like if you see a director that you love, or an actor that you love, or a context, I often go into a film with high. I don't want to. I'm like, but I've got high expectations, and often I'm disappointed. And I think it's only because I've subconsciously built it up in my mind. I don't know. I'm being open to the universe on this one.
Well, his character in this, Clint, is again left me cold. There wasn't really much depth there.
Yeah, well, I was a bit like, why should I care?
Yeah.
But then maybe that's not the point either.
Yeah.
I feel like me trying to find the point for every argument, I've got a counter argument in my head, which is like, so what? Because like the whole film isn't built that way.
I love the fact that we spent 13 minutes trying to talk about this film.
We're nowhere near it. We're not even scratched the surface of this movie. But that's why I think it's interesting, because I think it will polarize audiences. I think, you know, I know that people may have tuned out of this after 10 minutes. I can imagine people just going to turn this off. And I think that's also a shame. But yeah, I think it will polarize audiences. Yeah,
definitely. So ultimately then, it's a 4 from me. And yeah, I was going to give it a 3, but I think there's...
Oh no, I'm not going to go that.
I don't know.
No. I'm between a 5 and a 6 on this, just because I thought it was interesting. I know, you can roll your eyes.
Thumbnail.
Shock, horror. But there's something interesting about it, and it stayed with me. There's other films that haven't. I have thought about this movie afterwards, and therefore it has to have got some resonance. So I can't dismiss it. So therefore, okay, I'll say it's a 5. But I may change my mind on that number, but I think it's a 5 for today.
Are you downgrading? You were 6, weren't you?
I was between 5 and 6. I'm never on the number. I find on the number really boring. 5.5. No, I get it. I think it's not a traditional movie. It does not have a traditional linear narrative. But it does something. So I'll give it a 5.
There we go. The film is called Siberia. It left me cold. Can I just get that one in? Oh dear, crashy cymbals. Always good to see you, Sean. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Don't forget to subscribe.